Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 214 of the Nora Speaks podcast. And I am your host and your sister, Nora Muhammad. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for coming back and listening to another episode. If this is your first time listening, I encourage you to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. This podcast is on many podcast players that would include Spotify, Apple, Castbox, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, Audible. So, there's so many different platforms where you can listen. And I share that those other avenues by which you can listen because perhaps you are already a Audible user. So you can listen on Audible. Maybe you already listen to Spotify and that's where you get your music. Well, you can also find the podcast here or you can find the podcast there. If you like Apple Podcasts and you just want to hear your podcast there, but then you'll go somewhere else for your music, that's cool too. But I did want to let you know that this podcast can be heard on many listening platforms. But I'm glad that you're with me today. I'm glad that you have tuned in to episode 214. And I don't think that we can talk about social media enough, its uses, its misuses. Social media is such a valuable way to share information. It's a valuable means of communication. There are so many things that are happening around the world, and social media and the internet has really made the world smaller in that something that we may have heard about in a month or 2 months later, we can get it almost in real time because people have the opportunity to stream information live or to share, minutes after an event. So there's so many benefits to social media, but there's so many detriments as well. The same way that we have a way to broadcast important messages is the same way we have the opportunity to broadcast dangerous messages, harmful messages, false information. And also, I think of how we put millions of dollars in a young person's hands because they start a rap career, or because and they, with that rap career, they get that sign-on bonus, right? Or because they enter into professional athletics or get an NIL deal, and now they have access to hundreds of thousands of dollars. But with that with that money, they didn't get training. They didn't get information on how to have the resource as money, or in this case, social media as a resource. Often we are not trained in how to manage when we have something like that can where we can use it and it become detrimental to us. Let me explain what I mean. Sometimes we see our rap stars get into trouble with drugs or guns, and we say, man, this person has this opportunity. They have this opportunity they have a name, they're high profile now. Why won't they just leave that stuff alone, right? Or you see a professional athlete, and the athlete, is out in the club and has expensive cars and is speeding and doing all these things. And another DUI, you have this great opportunity. Just because we can put money in someone's hands does not mean their propensity for drug abuse, alcohol abuse, driving under the influence, like, right, that did not improve them as a person. Now that person just has more resources to abuse themselves and maybe others. Same thing with social media. Social media is amazing. The internet is amazing in that it can democratize media. So just because you don't write for the New York Times does not mean that you don't have the opportunity to be read or to be heard from, right? If you work for the New York Times, the Washington Post, I mean, they can be very, very prominent jobs for journalists. But the internet gives journalists who want to be more independent, want to have more control, that gives them an opportunity to get their stuff out there too. But what do you do when we give media and internet access to individuals that are untrained, that are uncultivated, that have no discipline, no esteem, and that in in general can be a destructive person, right? We see so much just like what we see when we give these young people who haven't had the opportunity to develop their character, when we give them millions of dollars through professional contracts. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get the millions of dollars. All I'm saying is that we have to have a way or a means and a mechanism that supports them with what they have in becoming a more mature person. And time can do that, but to see a professional athlete at 60, right, or at 50, or even 45, on a documentary saying, man, if I only had the information when I was 20, when I signed the contract, right? We're watching our young people use social media now because they have it as a resource. And what are they going to be saying when they're 45, right? When they're 50, what are they going to be saying about how they ruined their reputation before they even got out into the world, how it inhibited their ability for certain jobs or certain educational opportunities? I know employers who will interview somebody for a job and then go on their social media page and they'll say, not here, right? We know now that institutions, educational institutions, are scrubbing or scouring the internet to see what's happening on social media pages before they enroll students into their universities. We expose so much of our stuff that doesn't need to be exposed, right? So I'm thinking about social media in the hands of people, individuals who already are attention seeking, who already have low self-esteem, who already are unfiltered and don't have the discipline of their tongue. And now they're going to use social media. It can really be a damaging thing. And unfortunately, so many fights, shootings, conflicts begin on social media that fall out into real life, and people are losing their lives. Property is being damaged. People are being hurt because of what begins on social media, because we have people that have it and use it as a resource, but just don't have the character and development that would protect them from disgracing themselves and disgracing their families. So we really need to be thoughtful about how we use social media and how we see our loved ones using social media. Here I'm on this podcast, and I'm grateful to have a voice in this platform to talk about, what I see going right on social media and what I see going way wrong on social media. But then this podcast is only so influential, right? You may have a sister that's posting some stuff, right? You might have a son or daughter that's posting some stuff that may listen to you and may take down a post that you think is inappropriate. We have to understand that the social media should not be our public diary. The things that we find ourselves and others posting on social media are just terribly inappropriate. In no way would you allow strangers in your home. Just walk through your home. In no way would you allow strangers to see you laying in bed. If you had a repairman come into your house, you would not be in your robe or in your pajamas laying in your bed while that person is, fixing the closet door, or that repairman is, replacing the glass in your window. You wouldn't be in bed with a stranger in your house. But this is the kind of stuff that we post for strangers to see. We post pictures of ourselves in our beds, in our hospital beds, right? We post intimate information about our personal lives, about our marriages, about our relationships. We post unpleasant thoughts, unpleasant opinions, nasty opinions that we have of others and even ourselves. Social media is not a public diary. It can be a resource to share information. It could be a resource to keep up with your closest friends, your family, what's happening in your community. You could follow the police department's page, the school district's page. You could follow someone who's an author. You can follow their page, your favorite sports star. You can follow their feeds. But it is just not a place where we should be posting personal information about ourselves, information about others. It's just getting so out of control, and our children are just vulnerable to so much exposure because we put a smartphone in their hands, and we just want them to do their homework. We want them to do their homework, clean their bedrooms, not talk back to us. And this person that we're struggling to get those things right, we put a tool in their hand where they can use it, not just to broadcast things that they shouldn't be broadcasting, but to take in what other people are broadcasting that should not be broadcasted. So we really have to be more thoughtful about the use of social media by those people that we have influence over, by those people that are close to us. Sister, everything that you think should not be on social media. I mean, it's crazy. I'll see, a second ago, you're posting pictures of you and your husband and the wonderful marriage and wonderful newborn. And next thing I know, you're posting about the sadness of your divorce. And then now you got a new man and his children. And now y'all are a blended family. And I just think, my gosh, is there anything that you're keeping to yourself? And there's things on there that's way worse than that. And we're not doing a good job of protecting ourselves, understanding the importance of boundaries. It's social media has just given us the opportunity to be as foolish as we want to be publicly. And we should think better of it. We should think better of ourselves. Social media is not a public diary. And it's something that can be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tool, right? It could be a wonderful resource, but as with many things, when it is in the hands of a fool, it could be something much more dangerous. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property, and to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. What I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, norahmuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@norahspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nora Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nora Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.